All right, good morning and welcome everyone to our webinar today, which is titled, How Did You Do That? 10 Hidden Tricks Every MadCap Flare User Should Know, Part 2. My name is Jennifer Morse and I'm the Director of Customer Success here at MadCap Software. And today I am so excited to welcome back Daniel Ferguson, MadCap Flare trainer and consultant, and owner of Smart Output, a user help and technical documentation consultancy firm that excels in helping companies create and deliver industry best documentation and user assistance material. So back in June, Daniel was kind enough to present a wonderful learning session on 10 hidden tricks that every MadCap Flare user should know. And what was so fun, Daniel, is that you actually ended up with more than 10. So why stop there? And since we ran out of time, you were kind enough to come back for part 2 so that we can keep these tips coming. So no matter what your skill set today, I am sure that you're going to be able to take away a pearl or two, or maybe more from this session. I know I always do. So for our viewers that missed part 1, it is available on our website in the resources section where we have our library of past webinars. So you will be able to find it there in case you missed it live. So as we always do, before we jump in, there are just couple quick items of business that I want to mention before we begin. This webinar will be recorded. So if you have to jump out early for whatever reason, don't worry. We're going to send you a link to the recording. We're going to be recording it. Also, as always, there is that question panel in the GoToWebinar little console thing that you're looking at. I'd encourage you to drop questions in there as we go. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can at the end. But whatever we don't get to, we'll follow up afterwards with a question and answer document. So Daniel, thanks again for joining us today. Always fun to have you. I know you got a lot to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate it. What a wonderful introduction that was. And it's so good to be back. These are so much fun. I love being able to present and share some hints and tips and things that I've picked up over the years. And I really love being able to connect after the webinar. So here's my contact information. I would love to hear from you, connect on LinkedIn, get an email, whatever is the best way for you to connect. Let's do it. I think there's one of the things I love about working in Flare is not just the software, but the community. Great community. And so let's stick together as propeller heads. So as Jen mentioned, I'm just going to dive in. If you haven't had a chance to go watch part 1, that's okay. These aren't sequential. It's just that we ran out of time to get through the list on the first one. And so I'm just going to pick up where we left off right at the end of part 1 and just start going through the next list of hints and tips that I want to share with you. And like Jen mentioned, I hope that some of them are useful to you. I think that they will be. And let's get going. So let me close this out and bring Flare up. This is going to be 100% demo today. So where we left off before, I'm just going straight to my list here. And the next thing on my list was a Flare feature called file tags. A lot of people don't know about file tags, and they can be really, really useful if you're working in a project that has a lot of topics, even if it doesn't have a lot of topics, to be honest. So I want to show you, first of all, what file tags are, how you can use them, and how they can provide you valuable insight into the state of your topics and of your project. So first of all, file tags are generally kept in your advanced folder in your project organizer. If you don't have a file tags folder there, like I don't, you can just go ahead and create one. I'm going to add a folder and just call it file tags. Let's see, file tags, close enough. And then I'm going to go add a file tag set. In fact, I'm going to add 2 of them. So the first file tag set that I'm going to add, I will call it author. And I'm going to leave the tag type as author. And I'll show you where these tag types come into play a little bit later. So I'll create an author file tag set. And here I could list my authors. I'll just leave them as author 1 and author 2. But in your situation, you probably put real names here of people who are authors or owners of a particular topic. If I wanted to add a third author, I could just come in here and click this new item, and now I have another row here in the table, and I can just edit this and just type in whatever I want. There's author 3. Now, so that's an author file tag set. I'm going to go create another one, and I'm going to call it, I'll call it workflow, right, to kind of manage the flow of my topics. And I'm going to click this my status file tag set here as the template, and I'll leave the tag type as status. That's fine. And again, I'll show you where that comes into play again. And that template already has a few states for me to choose from. So you can imagine your topic going through these states, or any state that you can think of that's applicable to your situation, right? This is completely customizable. You can make this whatever you want. Picking a template is just a starting point. Now, with these file tags in place, I can go and in my topic properties, I'll just go into a topic properties here. In these properties, I can right-click any topic and come down to properties, and I have here a file tags tab. You may have seen this before and wondered what it was. This drop down right here is where those two states come into play, the author and status, right? So you can actually have multiple file tag sets with the same tag type. And if you do, they will all list right here. In my case, I only have 2 file tag sets, and they both use a different tag type. One is status and one is author. So when I switch this drop-down list, I will see the different file tags. Now, what I can do here is I can come in and say, okay, well, the owner of this is author 1, and it is currently in progress, and click OK. So now I've just indicated that feature 1, is owned by author 1, and the workflow is currently in progress. Now I can go through and do this for every single one of my topics. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here in the Flare Content Explorer, you may have noticed this before, is that with this default view in the Content Explorer, you can't multi-select. It may be really helpful to multi-select stuff, right, and apply an owner to a bunch of topics at once, or a state to a bunch of topics at once, or whatever it is. You can turn on what's called the Show Files view here in the Content Explorer, and this breaks your Content Explorer up into 2 columns. You've still got your folders on the left, but when you click a folder, the topics or the content within that folder show up in the right pane, and on this side, you can multi-select. So I can do a shift or a control click, and I can multi-select items, and I can come here and I can choose all of these topics and go to the properties and set we'll say complete this time, and let's say these ones are all owned by author 2, and I can set these file tags on all of these topics at once. So you don't have to go through them one by one, and there are other scenarios where using this split view in the Content Explorer is massively useful, especially if you need to move some things around, like move a group of files to another folder or something like that. It's really, really useful to be able to multi-select and move them around. So I wanted to point out that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. And I now have, I think, 5 topics that have file tags associated with them. And in this situation, if this is a real situation, I'd go through and do them all. Right? Give them all a state and give them all an author. Well, now the information is there. What can I actually do with it? What are the possibilities? How can I use this information? The way I find file tags to be most useful is in what's called the file list. The Flare file list is something that a lot of people don't know about. And if you click your View tab and click your file list, and it may take a minute to load your file list if you have a big project, this is just a list of all the files in your project with a bunch of helpful data about the files. Now, I want to point out here, there is a filter at the top of the file list where you can filter the types of files that you see in the list. I'm concerned at this point only with topics, so I'm going to select topic files, and you see it lists out the topic files that are in this particular project. This project, by the way, is just one of the templates. I think it's the side nav and PDF template or something. And so it came with these files. And you see all these different columns that I have along here. And if I scroll all the way to the right, I see my file tags. So I can see now on a topic by topic basis who is the author for any given topic and what the current state is of that particular topic. Now, if you don't like these columns all the way over on the right, you can reorder the columns and even turn off certain columns by clicking the Show Hide Columns here. And you get this little dialog that allows you to turn off certain columns, and you can see all of the extremely useful data that you can get from this view. But down here are my file tag sets, and I can go ahead and just move them up to wherever I want them to be. You can also click and drag the column in the actual table itself. That works as well. But I just moved them so I see them here now, closer to where I would, where it's kind of useful to me. In the file list, I can also click a heading and sort by that particular column. Now, if you have a huge project with hundreds, maybe even thousands of topics, I've seen those before, you can take this data and you can export it to a CSV file by clicking this tiny little button right up here in the local toolbar. Once it's in a CSV file, you can open it in Excel, and you can use Excel's sorting features and pivot tables and all kinds of things to really get some good insight on the state of the topics in your project. Of course, this all depends on you and your authors making sure your file tags are up to date. There's no automated process that moves, for example, the workflow state from one to another. You need to go in and click it and update it. So if the topics that are currently in progress have now been completed, well, I as the author need to come in and mark that as complete now, so that it'll show up correctly on my file list. This is a really underutilized feature in Flare, particularly for big projects. And when I point this out to people who are working with hundreds of topics, this is really a great thing for them to be able to see the state of their topics and how things are flowing and who owns what. Another thing that a lot of people like about this is the date modified over here for some reason. They like to see when a topic was last modified, and you can see that right here in the file list. This isn't one that my eye particularly gravitates to, but when I've shown this to people, a lot of them like, hey, there's the date modified column. So really, really useful to use the file list, and it's really useful to use file tags and be able to see them in the file list. There are other ways that you can use where file tags are used. You can run a report. Here in your project organizer, there's a reports folder, and I'm going to go right-click it and add a report file. And I'm just going to choose empty report, and I'll call it file tags and click add. I'm not going to go into reports in any depth, but if you haven't looked at this, this is another feature that's really, really good for you to have a look at the reports that you can run. So you see a huge list of options that I can run reports on here. And one of the options we have is the file tags section. And I can choose which of these options I want to generate a report on. I could also just say select all, just show me everything with file tags. And once that's done, all I have to do is click generate. And it generates the report for me, goes through and creates a report. And then I can open it in a browser. This will just pop open the report in a web browser, and I can scroll through and look at the report this way. I don't find this personally quite as useful as being able to open it in Excel and look at the file tags in that manner. But I wanted to point this out, first of all, because in some cases it is useful. Maybe it will be more useful to you to run a report. but also just to point out all the stuff you can run reports on. So this can give you tremendous insight into the health of your project by using these reports. So that is file tags. We talked about the file tags, we talked about the file list, and we talked about reports. So all really, really useful stuff, and I hope that is something that you as a Flare user will start using more, because it can really, really enhance management of your content and of your topics. Give you really good insight. Make sure your topics are well managed, that they're moving through the workflow states, and you're using those reports to make sure your Flare project remains in a healthy state. All right, let me close some things out here. Let's close everything but this file list. We'll go ahead and save that report. That's fine. Okay, so I want to point out another couple of things here. Sorry, just a second. Let me do this. So I want to move on and talk about definition lists. I think all of us are very familiar with ordered lists and unordered lists, numbered lists and bulleted lists. Definition lists aren't quite as common to use, but in certain contexts are very, very useful. Now, there's no button up here, like if I'm in a topic, let me just open up one of these, and I want to add a definition list here. There's no button up here in my list drop down to insert a definition list. And maybe I should back up a little bit. When would I want to use a definition list? Well, the reason why most people use definition lists, first of all, they're used a lot in reference documentation for command line options, especially in like the Linux, Unix world. So you'll see definition in those definition lists in those topics a lot. And the reason why they get used fairly heavily is, first of all, they're quick. They're very lightweight from a markup standpoint, much lighter weight than a table, and so they render really fast. But probably most importantly is that they're very accessible for screen readers, for people who have visual impairment. And in some cases, I've actually been contacted by a client asking me, like, how do I do this? I have to use definition lists to meet certain accessibility requirements that are statute in certain countries. So I want to point out, I want to first of all show you definition lists, but in the process of showing you definition lists, show you a couple of really cool hints that you may be able to use in other contexts besides just definition lists. So if I want to insert a definition list here, like I said, there is no button to do it. But just because there isn't a button to do it doesn't mean we can't do it. You just have to do it in a different way. So the first thing we're going to do is open up our code editor. And I am just going to open up in a side-by-side view here. In fact, let me switch it. I believe what I did is let me back up here. Down here in this bottom right-hand corner, there's two little buttons. One of them is an arrow, and one of them is a vertical split icon. This is how it shows up by default. If you click the arrow, you get an over-under view of your XML editor on the top and your text editor on the bottom. If you're not accustomed to seeing this, that's fine. This is just HTML, and this is a representation of your topic up on the top. In fact, maybe the inverse is true. This is actually a representation of your code down here. Now, I personally love having the code editor open. I never close it. I don't particularly like it down here on the bottom. I like it docked to the side, and so I'll click the vertical split button here, and it gives me a side-by-side view. Even if you don't like code, even if it's something you want to steer clear of and you don't really enjoy working in code, I still think it's a good idea to have it open, because as you work over here in your XML editor on the left, you'll watch the code build on your right. And you can start to learn how HTML works. However, there's nothing stopping you from working directly in the code over here. So for me, what I'm going to do to insert a definition list is I'm going to go hard code it first. And I only need to hard code it one time, because after that, I can create a macro to do this. Let me show you how. So to hard code the definition list, I need a DL tag open and close. And I'll line this up just for aesthetic purposes. That creates the definition list. And within a definition list, you have pairs of definition terms, which is a DT tag. And I'll open it and close it, followed by a DD, which is a definition. Okay, so that is all you need to create a definition list. And then over here, I could go start inserting the actual terms and definitions. Now, I don't want to have to go type that in every time I use a definition list. So you can actually create a macro to insert this. Now, you can create a macro to insert anything. If I were to have pushed the record button when I was typing this in, it wouldn't have recorded it. There are certain things that just the macro recorder can't do, and one of them it doesn't do is record you typing in code, at least as far as I know. I haven't been able to get that to work. However, what a macro can do is I can record a macro copying something, and actually, no, excuse me, I can copy this and I can record a macro of my pasting it. And then I can paste that code in anytime I want just with a shortcut key. So if you have to use, or you find yourself using HTML elements that aren't available in the Flare interface, or where you can't find an easy way to get, maybe you have a fairly complex div structure or something, and you can't get that just right using the buttons, you can come in here and set it up, and then you can copy it and paste it and record the page, which I'm going to show you right now, and then you can just have a shortcut key to insert that very quickly. So I'm going to take this here in my XML editor, I'm going to right click on the DL and I'm going to copy it. Now I'm going to come up to my tools window and I'm going to click record, and I will call this macro insert DL. I'm not going to worry about my capitalization. Okay, my macro is now recording, and then I'm going to right click and select paste. Okay, just put the definition list in for me, and I'm now going to go stop my recording. Now with that recording in place, I can go assign a shortcut key to it. We went through this last time, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. Here's my insert DL. I'll assign a shortcut key. Sometimes I have to do this a few times to get it just right. I just assigned Control 3. That now inserts my definition list. So click OK. And now anytime I want to create the definition list structure, all I have to do is press Control 3. And you'll need to apologize. I need to apologize. I'm not sure why my computer's running so slowly here. So I'll need it to just get caught up. While it's catching up, again, any time that you need to work in code to create something, you can create a macro to insert that. So let me go demonstrate this now. I'll just come in right here, press enter to create a new paragraph, and now I can just press Control 3, and it just inserts the code that I copied. Now this is rare. You don't generally have, well, I'm going to delete 2. You don't usually have 3 definition lists right in a row. So let me delete these 2. And I may come in here and start typing in my, my definitions here. Maybe I'll just call it option 1, and then I would have a description. Description. Now, at the end of description, if I paste enter, I get another definition tag, when what I probably wanted was a definition term tag. So I'm going to show you a couple of things here that you can add to your style sheet that will dictate what tag gets inserted if you press enter on the previous tag, and even what class can get it inserted if you press enter on a previous tag. And let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one, and I'm going to jump over to my style sheet here, resources, style sheet, styles, and you will see in the style sheet, once I get it open, that we have right up here, here's DD and here's DT. Even though these aren't insertable using the Flare interface, they're still available in the style sheet because Flare supports HTML5, right? And so all of these tags are available to you to use if you're okay using code to put them in some cases. So after my definition, when I press enter, what I want is another DT tag, not another DD. Well, there's a style sheet property called MC-next-tag. MC next tag. I think last time I checked, at least, if you were to just go search the list of available properties, this one doesn't show up. And so you need to type it in. Maybe it's there now. It's been a little while since I've looked. But the MC next tag property allows me to dictate what tag should be next when I click enter at the end of a DD. So I'm going to say next I want a DT. Give me a DT tag after DD tags. And maybe I'm going to add some more properties to this. After a definition, maybe I want some margin bottom, right? Just to maybe give it a little space. We'll just be easy and say 20 pixels or something. Okay, so I now have that MC next tag in place and a little bit of formatting. Now the same's probably also true with my DT. After a DT, I probably want a DD. Sorry for all these Ds, but that's just how it's designed. So for this one, I'm going to say MC next tag, next tag, enter. And after this one, I'm going to say I want a DD. I'll also give this one maybe a font weight of bold, just to make the term itself stand out. Okay, so now if I go back to my list, first of all, you see the formatting. I've got a font weight, this bold has just taken place, is now implemented. But now if I press enter after a DD, what I get is another definition term, another DT tag. And now I can type option 2 and whatever the description is, and forgive my horrible typing, and option 3, and on I go, right? With just being able to work through this list without having to go in and tinker with the tags over in the code to get it just right. And if I'm done with the definition list, I just press the down arrow a couple times and press enter, and I'm out of it. So I've just constructed a way. If you have to use definition lists a lot, what I just showed you is probably a lifesaver. But even just the principles I just showed here of recording a macro to paste stuff, and then being able to go into your style sheet and set an MC next tag can be really, really useful in a lot of circumstances. So, so definitely pay attention to those things. Now, there's not just MC next tag. We also have a option called MC next class. So I'm going to jump over here to another topic. I think I put it here in reference. Yep, note is where I created this. And this paragraph here, I want this paragraph to be a note. So I'm going to go apply the style class to it. This style class I created. This was not part of the template, so I created this note class. And at the end of this paragraph, when I click enter, what I get is another note paragraph. Now I'm going to come back and talk about this in just a minute, because sometimes you do want 2 paragraphs within a note, right? And people wonder, how do I do that when this is the construct I get when I try to put it, another paragraph within a note? Well, most likely, after you've written your note, in most circumstances, you probably don't want the next paragraph to be a note. You probably want this to just be a regular paragraph. And as it is, if you just click enter at the end of the note, you get another note, and then you have to go in here and reset the style class to get rid of the class. And there are quicker ways to do it than I just showed you, but you get the point. You have to go take the note off. Well, MadCap offers, or Flare offers, the ability to dictate what the next class should be. See, in the previous example, we were actually dictating the next tag. In this case, we don't want a different tag. We still want a paragraph. We just don't want it to be a note anymore. So we can create the use the Mcnext class to specify that anytime I press enter at the end of a note, take the note class off. You can also specify to put a class on if you want. I'm going to show you how to take it off, but you'll use this exact same thing if you want to insert a class. So I'm going to head over back to my style sheet here, and I am going to go down to my note class down here in my paragraph grouping. Give me just 1 second to get there. P.note, there it is. And I am going to say, I want an Mcnext Class property. Now, this gets, if you want to define a class, let's say you want the next one to be tip, you can just type in tip. And anytime after a note, I press enter, I'm then going to get a p.tip. Where I have found that people make the most use of this is not adding a class, but actually removing a class. The way to do this is in your Mcnext Class box here, put a double quote and then a space and then another double quote. This isn't completely ideal, and I'll show you why in just a minute, but it works and it doesn't break anything. It's just fine. You're just going to have an empty class in your next paragraph, and I'll point that out to you here. So if we go now with that in place, come back here to our note, and now at the end of this note, assuming I did it right, I press enter, and what I get is a paragraph now that is no longer a note. It's an empty paragraph. Because of the Mcnext class, I specified don't use a class. Now you see over here in the code, actually got the inherit class. I guess I decided to, I didn't save the style sheet maybe before I did that. Let me give that one more try and just see. Let me save this now. If this doesn't work, I may need to just go into the code and do it. So let me give it one more try. Let's see if it works this time. Okay, this time it did work because I don't think I had saved the style sheet last time, but you see it gets my empty quotes here. Exactly what I put in for my Mcnext class. Again, this is a touch inefficient to have a class that doesn't do anything, but this is also very easy to clean up using a global search and replace if you need to, and it's also not breaking anything. This isn't going to cause any problems at all. So you can set this up if you have a bunch of tips or warnings or note boxes or so forth, and you're tired of removing the class, then you can use the Mcnext Class attribute in your style sheet to remove that for you, and you don't have to keep doing it. Now, I also want to quickly address the question, because I get it a lot, on how do I put multiple paragraphs in a note? Let's say we want these paragraphs down here to be in a note, this one and this one. You can't group multiple, or you shouldn't, I don't think, group multiple paragraphs together in a paragraph. What we need to do is we need to group these together and then apply some style attributes to the tag that we use to group the paragraphs together. Now, the tag that's defined to do that is called a div. So in my style sheet, I'll show it to you really quick. I have created over here, let me close the paragraphs, we're done working in there. I have created a div note class right here. It actually has the exact same style properties as the paragraph note class. Now, what I can do is I can select everything I want in my note, and then I come up here to my home ribbon, and here in the paragraph grouping is this group button, and I'll click it, and this gives me all of the tags that are available to me to group these two paragraphs, one of which is my div.note. And push OK. Now I haven't done a lot of styling and so forth. This may not be where I want the note word to appear, maybe somewhere else, but now what I've got is two paragraphs within a div, and the div has a class of note, and so it's styling the entire everything that's within the div. So I can put as many paragraphs in here as I want, and they'll continue to just be part of the exact same note. That's how you can get multiple paragraphs into one note box. You could also put ordered lists, you can pictures, you can put whatever you want in here, right, within this div. But I wanted to point that out because I get that question quite a bit. So if you're wondering how to do that, well, just go create a div class, apply the style properties you want to it, and then select everything you want in that note box or tip box or warning box or whatever, and then just go click the grouping and choose that particular class to apply to it. All right, so that is Mcnext tag, Mcnext class. I'm looking at my list right here. We talked about copying, recording, pasting. Okay, I want to point out a couple of cool things with tables. I'm going to go open up a table style sheet here. So this template has this alternate row color CSS table style sheet. Table styles in Flare are just CSS files, but because tables are so complex from a markup standpoint, there's a lot of tags involved in building a table. Flare offers this super handy table style editor. And if you haven't used this, you need to become familiar with this. This is probably a webinar in and of itself to go through everything that you can do with table styles. It's very powerful and very flexible. I'm just going to point out a couple of things here that I want that people tend to look over when working with table styles. The first one is this apply style button up here. Let's say that you have created a table style, a new table style, and you want to apply it to all the tables in your project or all the tables in a particular folder or something like that. You don't have to go through table by table and apply that table style. I've got a table topic. I'll show you this right here. So I've got a table topic right here with a table in it. This table currently does not have a table style associated with it. You can see it's pretty blank. There's nothing associated with it. Now I could go through and I could right click the table and come select my table style. Nothing wrong with doing that. But if you have a lot of tables to go do this for, what you want to do is open up your table style sheet and click apply style. This allows you to choose the topics and folders that this table style will get applied to. So it's going to go through and it's going to search through all of the topics that I specify here with these checkboxes and apply the table style for me. So I'm going to click everything with the exception of home. I suspect there's some, home is always a kind of a unique topic, and I suspect there's some tables on there that I don't want the table style to be applied to. And then I have some options here on whether or not I want to override existing table styles. So you may not want to apply it globally. It may be like, well, if a table already has a table style, don't override it. Just apply it to the ones that don't have a table style yet. Well, in that case, you can uncheck that box. You can decide whether you want to keep or remove any print table styles that are associated with it, and you can decide if you want to remove any local formatting that may be in the table. I'm going to use the nuclear option and just keep all of these checked and click OK. And it goes through my whole project now And to every table, it goes through and it applies that table style. And it'll tell me how many tables it found and how many were updated. In my case, it found 4, and it applied the table style to all 4 of them. So that if I go back now to my table topic, you see that the table style is now applied. I didn't have to go apply this manually. I was able to use this feature to apply it. Super useful if you need to use a different table style on a massive basis. You can really quickly go apply those table styles using this apply style button. Another thing that I feel like gets overlooked a little bit, well, there's quite a few things in the table style that I feel like gets overlooked, but one of the things that really gets overlooked, I feel like, and I'm going to click here into the rows tab because this is where this is most applicable, but here there's this print options button. Now I can come in here and I can select both of my rows. I've got 2 row styles, body 1 and body 2, in this particular table style. The difference is that one of them has a white background, the other has a gray background, and they alternate. But I can come to print options, and I actually have some page break features here. This is, of course, particular to PDF output. What I like to do is say, you know what? I don't want my table row to break pages. I'm okay maybe with the table itself breaking pages, but not a row. So I can set the page break inside property to avoid. And if, when the Flare PDF target is running, if it encounters a table and it's able to keep it on one page, meaning the table row itself doesn't exceed 1 page in length, then it will move the whole table row to the next page if it's going to break. So I can click OK, and now I've just set it up so in my PDF output, I don't have rows that break pages. The row will always move to the next page, the entire row, if it can't all fit on the previous page. There are other print options. General has print options. If you don't want any tables at all, for example, to break pages, you can set that here so that the entire table will move if needed. You may want that. That's a little blunt in my experience. Table rows seem to be a bit more granular and more what people generally like. But I just wanted to point out the print options button here and to click into it and to use it. This is by far what I see the most. It's just coming in and setting this page break inside to avoid on table rows. Now, note that you have to select all of your table row styles. If you have more than one defined, this is a property that gets set on a row by row basis. So you need to make sure you select them all to go to make sure that it gets applied to all of your rows. Okay, so that's a couple things in the table style editor. Now, if I jump back to my table, one of the things that I really like is the table sorting capabilities in Flare. So I can click this table and come over here to this table tab, and I have some sort row capabilities here. I'm going to click this sort rows drop down, and I can sort this table by ascending, descending, or I have some advanced sorting options, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. So if I say click this to descending, it adjusts the entire table, and it's now in descending alphabetical order based on column 1. You saw ascending there, so we could do the same thing, right, with ascending, and now it's on ascending order. Now, coming back to this, if I highlight this table again, and you'll need to forgive me again, there we go. In my advanced sorting options, I have some really handy features. So first of all, I can create a pretty advanced sorting option algorithm. This is a very simple table. So let's just say I want to sort by column 1 and I want the direction to be ascending. And you can add, for complex tables, an additional layer, additional levels of sorting, sorting directions. Now I have these 2 checkboxes down here where I can apply it now. So, make it happen now. And I can apply it at compile time. And click OK. Now, if for some reason this table gets out of order alphabetically, if somebody comes in and adds a row, for example, and they just put it at the bottom of the table and they don't go back and resort it, it doesn't matter because I have it set up now in the advanced properties to sort the table when it's compiled. And so my Flare target is going to sort the table for me and make sure that it's all in alphabetical order because that's the rule that I specified based on column 1. This is really, really useful in circumstances where you're translating content, because alphabetical order in whatever language you've written your content in probably isn't the same alphabetical order as whatever language you're translating into. So if you can come in here and in the code, the actual XML markup specify that you want to alphabetize, for example, you want to sort the table or order the table at compile time, then the Flare target can automatically reorder the table rows in alphabetical order, no matter what language the content is actually in. This is really useful for generally like long sort of reference type tables where it's easiest to find information that's in an alphabetical order. So if that is a situation you're in, then definitely pay attention to this table sorting capabilities. You don't have to sort your tables manually ever again. So that's some cool things about tables. Let's see, we've got about maybe 10 minutes. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I'm not going to finish again. That's clear at this point. Maybe I need to learn how to talk faster. And I'm trying to think what's going to be the best thing to show. I think I'm going to show a couple of things real quick with TOCs. Let me open up a TOC because this is really a powerful feature of Flare to be able to single source, I'll call them single source TOCs, not just share TOCs among multiple targets, like reuse a TOC in multiple target, but reuse TOCs in other TOCs. So first thing I want to point out here with TOCs is this button over here, toggle double click behavior. By default, this is disabled. And when you double click a topic, it opens up a TOC entry rather, it opens up the TOC entry's properties. If you click this button, by double clicking a TOC entry now, it will open up the topic. I generally find that people like this enabled, but there are circumstances where you want to disable it if you need to go through and change the properties for a lot of TOC entries. I also want to point out that the TOC also has a grid view, very similar to the file list, where you can get a lot of information about your TOC entries very quickly without actually having to go through and look at the properties of every single one of them. And you can export this to Excel as well, or to a CSV file. Now let's say that this features section here, let's say I want to use that somewhere else, just the features section. Or let's say I want to build the features section into its own PDF. Well, one option would be to copy all of this and put it into a new TOC, but that's a non-optimal option because now you have dual maintenance. You've got two features TOCs that you need to maintain. Another option would be to go create another TOC, and we'll call it features. It's already pre-populated in there. And I can then take from my online TOC the whole feature section. I'm just going to cut it, and I'm going to go paste it into this TOC. Now I've got a bunch of stuff here that I don't need. Moving TOC features like TOC entries around is very easy with these blue buttons that you see up here in your TOC editor. So I don't want features to be down here at the second level. I want it to be at the top level. And in fact, I don't even want these other entries that were just put here by default. So I'm going to delete book 1 and book 2. Now I've got a features TOC and it's got the topics in it. And now in my master online TOC, I can just drag this TOC and stick it right here. Now I want to point out something very important. When I build this, and I'm going to go build it right now, this HTML5 TOC uses, target uses the online TOC. So I'm going to build this, and I'm going to show you what happens with this features entry. I thought I clicked build. Sorry, it says it's being built right now. Let me open up the build window and have a look. There it is. So this will be good. So it's running right now. While this is running, I'm going to, well, I just showed you some window manipulation capability that hopefully I'm going to get into here in just a minute to show you how to arrange and organize your windows within Flare. So when this finishes building, I'm going to open up this output, and you see the feature section did get included, but when I expand it, what I see is another features. And then only at the third level do I see the actual topics. You can get away from this construct happening by right-clicking this nested TOC entry, going into its properties, and selecting here in the Advanced tab, when merging, replace node with merge TOC. Now, when I save that and rebuild the target, there's only going to be one level of features, not two. Essentially, it takes this exact entry right here, and it just replaces it with the content of the nested TOC itself. So when that finishes building, I will show that to you. And while that's working, I'm just looking ahead to my list here. I do think I'll have time to show you just one or two other things. So when I look at this now in the output, you see that there's not another feature layer here. It just jumps straight to the topics. So this is really, really useful to be able to sort of componentize your TOCs and then nest them into bigger TOCs, especially if you're building sort of standalone PDF guides but want a big single HTML site. Then you can create a TOC for every guide, and then you just nest those TOCs within a bigger HTML TOC. Now, just real quickly here before we get to questions, I want to point out a couple of interface customization features here. How can you set up your interface for optimal efficiency? You can move all of these windows around, and you can give them different behaviors. One thing I see very frequently is moving the TOC so it's actually not in a tab, but that it stays open over here on the left. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to grab my TOC tab, where it's open by default. I'm just going to click it and pull down. The TOC is now floating. And as I click its title bar and move it around, you see, I hope you can see, this is coming through on the web conference. You see different little icons. And as I hover over the icons, it's giving me a preview of where this window is going to land when I let go of my mouse button. What I see a lot of people do with the TOC in particular is bring it over here to this left pane and then dock it to the right of the Project Organizer and Content Explorer. Now I have a side-by-side view with my TOC, which never closes until I go close it, and my Project Organizer Content Explorer over here. Now I even have some space down here that I might be able to use. So let's say I want to stack my Project Organizer and Content Explorer. I can grab my Content Explorer here, and I just clicked, and I'm just going to pull out. Same thing. My Content Explorer is now floating around, and I can come all the way over here and say, I want this to show up on the bottom half over here. So now I have my Project Organizer on top, Content Explorer on bottom, and my TOC right here just to the right. And then I have my whole editor pane over here. So I can very quickly get to things through my TOC, my Project Organizer, Content Explorer without having to do any extra clicks. Now, over here in the window ribbon, I can save this layout. I'm going to save this layout window as, I'll call it, this is my authoring layout, right? When I'm authoring, this is what I do. This is the layout that I want. And then I can come choose which layout I want to apply for whatever task. You can have as many layouts as you want for different tasks you may be doing. If I want to get back to the way that it was, I can just click default and Flare will put it back to how it was for me. And then, and so you can have multiple window layouts for, you know, for different tasks that you may be doing. I like the authoring layout that I just showed you. That tends to be how I work this way. And so I just showed you how you can click and drag windows around. It takes a little getting used to, a little practice to get it just how you want. But that's just give it a try. Just drag them around and drop them, you know, where it looks like you want them, and see how it works for you. You can also, just real quick, most of the windows that we work with are in the docked state. I just showed you a couple in the floating state where it wasn't docked anywhere, it was just floating around. But there's also this auto hide. So check this out. Over here, let's say this pane, this right pane over here, if I click auto hide, then it hides the pane over there, but it leaves them available over here in the far right, where I can just hover over or click one to get to that pane and can go through and do whatever I need to do. And when I'm done with it, I can just come back out of it, click out, and it goes away. So they're there, right? I can see that they're there, but they're not taking up any screen space. So I can get to them quickly and easily, but there's no, you know, I have more room just for my content without that right pane being open all the time. And I can go save that too. So those are some Flare interface customization options that you have, and I'd really encourage you to fiddle around with them and find the layout that works for you, and then save it. And like I said, you may have different layouts for different tasks. Your layout for authoring may be different than for indexing. For example, you may have a specific indexing layout, that kind of thing. Okay, so that takes us about to the end of the time here. I want to turn it back over to you, Jen, and let me bring
Sure.
this back up so you
Yeah.
can talk about, oh, let me page down. There we go.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. That was great. So many fun questions are coming in, so we're going to try to get to a few here. But just
Sure.
so one quick little note here for those of you who are not on the authoring and management system now with us, there is a discount on the monthly rate. So if you're interested in getting the complete solution to support everything from content development and publishing and reviews and all the project management with Central, then please reach out to us so we can get you some special pricing on that, because it is discounted right now. So I just wanted to make sure that was that everybody knows that. Let's see, are we on? I think that was it for the slides. Questions?
Yep.
Okay. Lots of applause for, I'm so glad that you showed the apply table style feature. That's one of my favorite things, and I was so excited that you showed everybody that because it's so useful. Kind of working from that real quick, there was a great question that came in. You were talking about, you know, using the alternating rows and not splitting when those rows encounter a page break.
Mm-hmm.
But can we tell the table, you know, if we're using a proper header row, can we have that header row follow the table that breaks? In other words, you know, if we're using a header row and we keep the row together at the page break, we go to the next page, we have a fresh row that didn't break. Can the header persist? I think is the question on the next table. Can we set that up?
The answer to that is yes. The question is how.
Yeah.
and right now, I don't have the answer on the top of my head, but I know it's capable. So that is a phenomenal question. If you know, Jen, go ahead and say it. I'd have to go look it up.
Yeah, we that's a great one. We could, if we had another 20 minutes, you know, but there is a way. So for the person who asked, it's such a great question, and the answer is yes. And that's actually one of the great things about using assigning a proper header row to your table so that you have those controls when page breaks are encountered. So we'll get back to you on where that setting is, but I know that it is an option, but I thought it was a great question. I wanted to repeat that for everybody. So let's also talk about, I'm trying to find one quick here because a few folks asked sort of similar questions, and it'd be fun to kind of group them together and help everybody there. Let's talk a little bit about the advanced table sorting that you showed. That was really cool.
Okay.
One of the questions was, can the advanced table sorting at compile time be included in the table style, or is it done table by table?
That is a great question. I believe it's done table by table. I don't think I've ever seen it applied, an option in a table style to apply it. I've never thought to even ask the question. So that's another one I'll need to get back to you on. I'm not sure. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I haven't tested that myself, so I don't want to comment, but we'll take that as a lookup item. That was a great one, and get back to you on that. Can we talk a little bit about, there were lots of high fives for the grouping in the div class tip you gave. Can you kind of explain a little bit? Is a div class how we can group an image into a note type style, for example? Is that one approach?
Sure. Yeah, you can group anything you want in div. So if you have an image and you want to group it with its caption or with a paragraph or with anything else, go ahead and put that in a div. You can also, just like we saw the page break properties on the table, on the table style, you can apply page break properties in the style sheet as well. So you could say, let's say you have a div.image container. You can go into your div.image container in your style sheet and set the page break inside to avoid, so that div always sticks together. Image will always stick together with its caption. So it's really, really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, they travel together, is what I like to say.
Yeah.
So question, I think, again, more high fives on the macro tip you gave. Is there a way, so how do macros work? Is it on a project by project basis, or do they sort of, can they exist across multiple projects? Can they be shared? How does that work?
Yeah, macros can be shared, but they aren't part of your Flare project. Meaning if you have your project in source control, your macros do not get committed to source control. They are not project specific either. So if you create a macro on your machine, any project you open has that macro available to you. In order to share the macro, you have to dig into into your file system a little bit. This is actually documented in the Flare help. I looked it up last time, and it'll tell you exactly what folder to go to, and then you can share that folder with another user, and they put that same folder in the same location. They'll have all the same macros that you do, but they don't stay in sync. It's just like, here you go, go ahead and apply them. So that's how macros work. So that's how you can share them.
Great. One quick one. I think we have time for just a couple more, and I hope everybody can just stay on a few minutes because these are such great questions. I'm trying to group some common ones together. For the interface customization that you showed, we were kind of dragging and creating this nice layout here that sort of works for you. Does that save at the local user level, or is it, so the question specifically, is it at the local user level or the project level?
Local user level.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for clarifying that. And then can we get back, just to kind of go back to the file tag thing, because there were a lot of fun questions there, and it sometimes comes up sometimes there's some confusion between file tags and condition tags. Maybe can you talk a little bit about, why file tags versus conditional text? So some folks are commenting, well, I'm using conditional tags for things like in progress already. Like, why would you use one over the other, or how are they used in conjunction?
Condition tags are used. The purpose of conditions is to keep content out or put content in to a specific target. I caution against using condition tags as a method to just give you indicators, visual indicators in your particular in your Flare interface for something, right? Condition tags are nice because you get the color, you get colors right in your interface so you can see, but there's no keeping a condition from showing up in your target. And all it takes is for one person to go click one of those checkboxes, and all of a sudden, who knows what's happening with your output? And so using conditions as a way to track metadata, essentially, about your file or your topics leaves you in a bit of an exposed position. If you're the only one working your Flare project, maybe it's okay. If you've got a team of people, I would really caution against using condition tags as a file tag option, just because they can be wielded to produce dangerous results. Well, maybe not dangerous, but unpredictable results if somebody actually goes and starts tinkering with the conditions in the targets. So I definitely prefer file tags. File tags allow you the opportunity, right, to apply all kinds of different data and states and authors, and who you can create anything you want, and you can use those as file tags. It won't do anything ever to your output. So there's no risk of anything getting broken or used improperly or that type of thing like you have with conditions. So I've seen people use conditions in exactly, lots of people use conditions in exactly what was just described. I just don't think it's a very good practice, personally, to do that. Is it the end of the world? Well, no, if you have the discipline and you don't actually go set an include or exclude in the target. But the fact that it's even there may lead to some unexpected results down the road if somebody else starts working in your project, or when you hand it off to somebody and they're wondering. So
Yeah,
now,
good
if
advice.
you're actually using conditions like the in progress condition to control, say you have a draft target and you have a production target and you have an in progress condition, and it's excluded in your production target and included in your draft target, then sure, go ahead and use the condition, because you're using a condition for what a condition is supposed to be used for. And if you can get some extra mileage out of it by using it as an indicator to show you what the state a particular topic is in, that's fine. But I wouldn't go create a condition for the purpose of just tracking the state of a file. That's
Yeah,
my advice.
good advice. I think we have time for one more, and we're just going to keep this question panel open here for just a minute more. So please keep, asking. We're going to follow up because we won't be able to get to every single one. But when we were talking about, you were showing how we can drag the TOC book in and, remove the duplicative top level book there, right, and the properties of the book.
Yeah.
The question was, can you do the same thing with conditional text too, or is it better to use your approach?
I'm not sure I fully grasp the question. You can, if the question is, can you put conditions on TOC entries? The answer is yes, for sure, right? So if I don't want procedures to show up in a particular output, then I can come in here and on conditional text, I could say, this is screen only or whatever it is, keep that section out of my PDF guide. Yeah, so you can set conditions on TOC entries to control what's in and out of a given target. The purpose of my showing nesting TOCs, or I can't remember, you just called it, Jen, putting books in, but this construct is if you needed to reuse content in multiple TOCs, like a whole section, say a whole chapter, and you wanted to use it in multiple TOCs, but you still wanted to single source that TOC. You could create a chapter level TOC and then insert that in all the other sort of master TOCs where it needed to be. And now you just have one chapter TOC to maintain rather than 2 or 3. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. A couple more came in. I hope guys stay on for a couple more minutes. They were so good. I think it's good to repeat them. Maybe talk, the definition list was also quite popular. Can you give, I know you gave sort of a little example there. I don't know if you have any sort of real world examples, or maybe you can talk a little bit about where else we may use them, like a visual, because I think they're quite helpful for the audience.
Let's go see here. Actually, we probably don't want this. Let's go, let me show Linux command line reference. We'll just maybe look for the ls command. So a lot of these, and this one's just a pretty raw text file here, but you see here, this is a command line description for the ls command. This is a Linux, well, Unix command. And you see what's here is a definition list where you have the definition term and the definition definition. This is extremely common in command line reference documentation, is to see this sort of a construct. This one has no styling associated with it, basically. Most of them have a little bit more styling than this. But if you go look at pretty much any command line reference, this is the construct that you're going to see. It's extremely common, and this is where I see it most often, is in command line reference documentation, where you've got the term is the option and the definition is what that option does.
Right.
So that's where I see it by far the most frequently. But I'm also seeing more and more people replace just standard 2-column tables with definition lists for the reasons that I described. They're more accessible. They're easier for screen readers to read, and there are far fewer tags, and so it actually reduces the size of your topics, which can, we're talking milliseconds here, but can improve the performance of your online help site. So,
yeah, good point. And then to kind of build on that, can you sort those definition lists the way we did it with the table? Is that possible? Or no, okay.
No, that is not possible, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great feature suggestion.
Yes, definitely. All right, well, we are definitely a little over time. I want to thank everybody for staying on. I know we have a couple questions that we didn't get to, but not to worry. We will be following up with a question and answer document. So I just want to thank everybody for joining. And Daniel, thanks for sharing these fun things. I took away a few. I hope all of you did as well. This was so great. Always wonderful to have you on. I want to thank the audience for being engaged and for all of their great questions and for hanging on with us a little longer. And we do hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week. We hope to see you on the next webinar. And thanks again, Daniel. We really appreciate your time. It was awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you. So much fun. I appreciate it. Talk to you all later.
Take care, everybody. Okay.
Bye.